Good evening, everyone. You're watching Bharat Voice, and I'm Ritika Acharya. It's been 1 year. It's December 2020, and been 1 year since this COVID-19 was detected for the first time. And we are nearing a year since the time all the countries declared a pandemic and declared a lockdown in their respective countries, including India. Now, in this time, it becomes imperative after the vaccines are already ready by many countries, including India's, it becomes imperative to understand what the vaccines really do and to dispel the fears regarding why should we be taking a vaccine. Do Indians really need a vaccine which are made in India and not made in West? To dispel all these fears and to talk about this, today we have with us Dr. Praveen Kumar. And Dr. Praveen Kumar is a hemato-oncology and bone marrow transplant physician with the NHS in the United Kingdom. He's also employed as a consultant at the Royal Wolverhampton NHS Trust, and his area of specialization is blood and lymphatic disorders, which are closely linked to the immune system. Dr. Praveen Kumar, welcome to Bharat Voice.
Pleasure.
So today we are talking about the vaccine, which is the talk of the town now. Everyone's come out with a vaccine. There's Covaxin, there's Pfizer, there's Sputnik, and there are all these varieties. I want to first understand from you, because when I go on ground and I talk to a lot of people, I talk to a lot of villagers as well, and even the urban folk. For starters, people don't even understand what a vaccine really does and why do we even need one. Can you please elaborate?
Okay. So, vaccine is a substance you basically introduce to the body to develop
Yeah.
the antibodies to fight against the microbes.
Hmm.
These are the microbes can be bacteria or virus. And in the present
Yeah.
context, we are talking about the viruses. Now, why do we need a vaccine? So it depends on a little bit
Right.
of background about what we are dealing.
Right.
This is a global pandemic. It is a high transmissibility. It is spreading,
Yeah.
and it is causing a lot of deaths. And more than
Yeah.
that, we don't have any effective treatment. And all we have found so far is that only steroids help when you become so ill. There is nothing to
Hmm.
prevent the infection from spreading. So we have to accept that we don't have any effective treatment at the moment. Given a scenario where deaths are happening when the hospitals are inundated with patients, so the only obvious choice is to prevent you becoming ill. So that is the
Hmm.
only option, and this is where the vaccine comes into play. So vaccine,
Yeah.
what is going to do is it will gently stimulate your body. It will produce the antibodies, and it also stimulates what is called as T lymphocytes. They are like your memory boxes. It's something like
Hmm.
black box in an airplane. So
Yeah.
they remember who entered your body, who has gone. Everything will be stored. So you leave an imprint in those black boxes called T lymphocytes, so that it remembers when the next time actually the virus enters your body, then you're able to mount a response so that you don't become unwell. You maybe still be transmitting to others, but you
Hmm.
yourself are not going to get a serious disease. And that is
Yeah.
why we need the vaccines now.
But why I'm understanding, why I'm trying to understand from you, and why I'm asking you this is because we are told the age-old tradition of follow the Ayurveda, follow Ayurveda, take what your grandmother used to tell you, have the kadas at home. You don't really need anything. You don't need a medicine. You don't need a vaccine. And most people have been, of course, in this time, especially in India, have been treating themselves at home. That's why it becomes all the more important to understand that we are not taking those kadas, we're not taking those age-old Indian medicines at home and trying to treat ourselves. Why do we really need a vaccine? Can't we just build our immunity on our own?
I mean, there are two types of immune system you're talking about. One, what
Hmm.
we have inherently already have immune system,
Hmm.
which I can't
Hmm.
change. I'm born with that.
Hmm.
And there is
Hmm.
something, another immunity, which you can boost your immunity. And of course, Ayurveda has got a science in it. There is ways of developing the immunity, but that will not protect you entirely for this kind of diseases. And it's
Okay.
already been established through a lot of work that has gone in the genetic background of people who are getting infected. If you have a particular genetic background, you're likely to develop infections and succumb.
Hmm.
So you cannot
Hmm.
change those particular traits of your genetics in you.
Hmm.
Of course, you
That's
can take
very
all those.
interesting, sir. You mentioned, sir, it's very interesting you mentioned genetics. I'm just sorry, I'm just intervening you there. Because just the other day, I was having a talk with some of our family and friends that are settled in the UK, settled in London, and we were talking about genes. And they were asking us, how is it that, Indians have a higher recovery rate? And how is it that Indians are falling lesser ill or recovering better? Is there something about the genes that Indian genes, or let's say the Asian genes, are able to respond to this sort of a vaccine better? And let's say the genes that are present in people living in the West, in the Northern Hemisphere, maybe, are not that great.
I mean, when you're talking about this recovery rate, there is a bit of a misunderstanding. I mean, I would say, a lot of hype was created regarding this recovery rate. Let me explain to you a minute what recovery rate is. Recovery rate,
Okay.
you get up an infection, and then after 7 days, you take a swab and you prove that you're negative, and that data
Mhm.
is being sent to somewhere in John Hopkins, and they compile together, and then they close it as recovery. Now, a lot many
Hmm.
countries are not essentially doing this follow-up testing, which India meticulously did, and therefore you
Right.
see more returns coming as being cured, whereas it's
Right.
happening in other countries also. So that is a bit of a spurious. I wouldn't take too seriously about it. Now, at the end of the pandemic, every country in the world will have 99% of the population still alive, and only 1% would have dead from from this disease, and therefore
And
the
hmm.
recovery rate across the globe will be the same across all the countries. But when you
And it's
take
nothing
the
to do with genes, sir. Stronger genes,
no,
maybe.
in fact, the higher number of deaths have been observed in the Indian population living in the UK. And in fact, there is a acronym called BAME category has been made. That is the
Uh-huh.
African Caribbeans and British Asians. We
Yeah.
have what we have seen is in my own practice, I have seen that a lot many Asians had a severe disease. I myself had a very nasty disease in the very beginning of the pandemic. I suffered a lot. So I know my patients are also doing the same thing. So it is not entirely true that we are protected against this disease. On the other hand, in fact, what it has been shown that we are inheriting this genetic imprint from our Neanderthal ancestors. Neanderthals lived, I don't know how in the past. So we inherit those genetic composition of the Neanderthals as well as the West Europeans. Therefore, these two populations have suffered the most, according to the scientists. So if you look at it, actually we are not protected at all. Why
Hmm.
India witness less number of deaths as compared to the Western population is because we have 60 to 65% of our population are youngsters, as compared to Europeans and Americans, where the large population are the elderly
Hmm.
population and people
Hmm.
living in nursing homes, residential homes. And
Hmm.
our family values also ensured that we protected our elderly population. So there is a
Hmm.
skew there, and therefore, this
Hmm.
genetic protection is not true. We are as vulnerable as anybody. In fact, I
All
would say
right.
even more vulnerable because we have got a large population of comorbidities. People, we are the diabetic capital of the world. I mean, there are a lot many people having hypertension, ischemic heart diseases. They are the ones who suffer the most with this virus, and therefore, I think on the contrary, I would say we have to be even more careful than the rest of the world. But somehow, touch wood, so far we have done better, but we have to
Hmm.
watch and wait very carefully.
Okay, I'm going to come to that as to whether we fare better or not, and what does the Western world think about us. Let's understand what are these different vaccines made up of, and how are they different from each other? Because also the fear is that India wants to make its own vaccine because people want to have an Indian vaccine. People don't want a vaccine that has been made outside. And the circles that I go to, let's say when I go to the villages of Karnataka, they stress on the fact that what is a vaccine first. They want to understand. There's a lot of fear about it, and then when you explain them a little bit, that they go like, no, we want something which is from the Indian doctors, which is made in India. So how are these vaccines different from each other? How is Covaxin different from, let's say, a Pfizer, which is made in the US?
So, in order to address the problem of this virus, scientists started looking at different ways what it could be done. Traditionally, what you can do is for virus, you can take the whole
So
virus.
if I can just request you to talk a little louder.
Okay, so in order to address the infection from the viruses, what you can do is you can take the whole virus, you can inactivate. There are different ways you can
Hmm.
inactivate and then inject into the body. Or I could
Right.
take a part of the virus I can introduce into the body, or I can trick the body that there is a virus that is entering. In fact, there is no virus entering, but trick the body and then produce antibodies. So that's another way of doing it. So what the Americans have done, that's the mRNA vaccine by the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine. What they have done is they have taken what is called as the mRNA. mRNA is nothing but a small protein molecule that is there in our body that gets the instruction from the DNA what to manufacture. So what it does, it just proofreads and just produces those proteins. That's all it does. So scientists, what they
And
did was,
it's been tested on the US populace, I'm guessing, not on the Indian populace, right? Because it's been tested
I mean,
there.
largely, yes, you're right. See, both these trials from the Pfizer and the Moderna were done in America. Again,
Yeah.
they include about 6% of the Asian population. Now, the problem in America, American trials are when the club Asian population, it includes like Japanese, Chinese,
Yeah.
Vietnamese, Cambodian, whatever, an Indian population. So I do understand what the apprehension an Indian thinks about when reading these trial data, how it is going
Yeah.
to, efficacy wise as well as the safety wise, how it is going to be in our
We
population.
want an Indian vaccine. Yeah.
Exactly. And there's a blessing in disguise. Pfizer vaccine, I mean, Indian government tried, but it's very expensive. For a vial, it costs $37, and it is very expensive for our economy. And also the storage requirement of minus 70 degrees, we can't get it. So therefore, Pfizer is not going to be a big vaccine that's going to come to India, even if it's approved. So
Whereas the
that
Indian
leaves the
vaccine,
other.
which is tested on the Indian populace, is going to be more effective, you feel?
Yeah, the Oxford vaccine is the number one, which we have been banking, and already we have got
Okay.
enough supply. And this is one which in liaison with the Serum Institute, they have already done the large studies, and we have got
Yes.
already the phase 2 and then phase 3 data will be coming. So we can bank upon those trials for those people who are apprehensive. I don't want tested somewhere. I want indigenous. So we have got Oxford vaccine, and Bharat Biotech is already finished their phase 2 trials. Now they are going on to the phase 3 trials that is exclusively done in India. It's done across 24 centers, and they have selected 12 large hospitals. So you got Indian data to bank upon, and they have demonstrated the same level of efficacy. If not efficacy, sorry, I should reframe. Same level of safety as compared to any of these
Right.
other vaccines. We are yet to get the phase 3 trials. We're yet to
And
get
of
the
course,
phase 3 trials.
and I was just adding on to what you were saying, sir. And of course, this comes when India wants to produce its own vaccine, also because India is one of the largest producers of pharmaceuticals across the world. And when the whole debate around hydrochloroquine started, what did you notice in the UK circles in NHS? Were people apprehensive of taking hydrochloroquine coming from India?
I mean, UK was a country which never believed in hydroxychloroquine from day one. So what they did was
Yeah.
cleverly they put it into the trial, and
Yeah.
whatever the supply they had already they used for the trial, but they never let it into the general population. So that way it was sort of insulated. But it is generally acknowledged that Indian pharmaceuticals are the large suppliers. For example, if you look in all the
Yeah.
antihypertensive drugs, what I use, when I look at the back, it said Dr. Reddy's Laboratories or whatever. So, the
Yeah.
world has already been used to use the drugs manufactured in India, and many of them have got a long track record of getting into the international standards. So there is no concern as far as using the drugs manufactured in India. And so will be in the vaccines. India has been contributing about 60% of vaccines across the world. That all comes from Serum Institute. So there is a long
Right.
track record of having being in the production line.
Now coming to the NHS in the UK a little bit, because your experience comes from there. I want to understand what exactly is happening in the United Kingdom right now. The latest news is, of course, there's a new virus that has been new mutation of the virus has been detected, and it's more serious. And now the flights have been stopped from UK. Many of the countries have stopped their flights from UK. What exactly is happening there? Is there a lot of stress? Is there a lot of fear? Do we need a new vaccine now? Because we've been working on these trials for the last 8 months. The vaccine was almost ready, was almost going to be announced, and now comes this new mutation. What exactly is happening?
So the UK went through the first wave, and it was pretty bad. I mean, it sort of started waning around June, July time. And there was about 3 to 4 months, it was a lull, it was all slipping back to not near normal, but it is slipping back. And then it was expected that the winter pressure will be there, and then it's known to spread indoors. What happened was in the summer people are all out and in the outdoor. Now in the winter you're all going inside, so the spread is inevitable. So it was expected, but what was unexpected is the development of the mutations. Now UK has invested quite a lot on the tracing the genome of the virus, and from day one it invested heavily on this. So the Cambridge lab was tracking this. So what they noticed somewhere in September, that one of those virus, I think coming from a patient who had immune compromise, was not looking right. It was different in constitution. When they started looking into it, they traced many of them, and especially in and around London, they could trace it out. So they found a mutation in the spike which enters the cell. So that is what we have been all along targeting, developing a vaccine, and it came as a bit of a shock, because you are concentrating mainly on the spike, and that is the main weapon the virus is using, and that is where we are trying to hit it hard. So,
but have you been seeing a lot of fear around you, sir, in the
exactly.
UK?
I mean, suddenly there is a fear started, panic started. I don't know why, but I can understand because of the government figure of 70% more transmissibility. Now, one of the most recent papers states is about 56% more transmissibility, and I'm seeing that graph is going up. Now, on average, 35,000 new cases are coming up every day, and hospitals are filling up. 17 to 80,000 people are in the hospital across the UK. So it is definitely known that it is spreading, and also in South Africa, the same strain is spreading. And in South Africa,
And
they have found
now it's happening in Hong Kong, and I think it's been detecting Hong Kong and Japan as
in
well.
Hong Kong, in Japan, and elsewhere. And it is likely that almost every country it would have spread by now.
So we don't need a new vaccine for this. We don't need a new vaccine for this new mutation. The older vaccines, which the trials are going on, that's going to pretty much work.
Yeah, I mean, the mRNA vaccines, especially the Moderna and the Pfizer, should be able to work, because they have taken the whole spike and all the proteins possible combination. And Moderna, in fact, issued a statement that they have done studies and gone through their the vaccine composition, and they're pretty confident that there shouldn't be any problem with this. Only problem is in the coming months to years, when more changes happen, probably they will have to tweak a little bit of their vaccine. So that means we may have an annual, different vaccines coming together. That's all I see. But as far as situation now, I think these vaccines should be able to take care of it.
Okay. So you're talking about a slight tweak in the vaccine. You're talking about, a tweak in the annual vaccinations because there's a new mutation now. Of course, again, talking about the fear, another question comes up, and I can see one of the comments as well, that, vaccines become a sort of a business. What are your comments on it? Because most people end up thinking that, oh, tomorrow I'm going to be sold this vaccine by the government, and I'm not going to get this for free. Why should I get it? Now, because all these vaccines are coming into, let's say, India or coming into different countries, everyone is going to sell their own, that please buy our vaccine, buy the Pfizer or buy the Sputnik. This is going to become pretty much a business. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, yes and true. I mean, if you look at the amount of the vaccination that needs to be done across the world, to cover 6 or 7 billion population, I mean, logistics of the money that is involved. If you look at it, it is natural, but the common man thinks that it's all the business that is involved. I can only talk about the scientific aspect of it. What are the other options we have? We don't have another option. If you don't vaccinate now, now initially we thought if this 60% of the population is covered with an infection, then probably it will die down. But every country is having the second waves coming through, and in India also, barring the major cities, no other city has got more than 20 to 30% population infected at any point of time. So it is likely that it will keep coming back. So in such a scenario, do we have any other option? We don't have any option but to vaccinate and bring this immunity in the population, so that finally the virus wanes away. That's all the option we have at the moment.
But then obviously it brings us to a natural question as well, right? So since you're talking about vaccination, you're vouching for these vaccines. The entire populace cannot be vaccinated. No, India is 1.3 billion population. Not everyone can be vaccinated. We are hoping to cut the chain somewhere, and we're hoping to first vaccinate the health workers and people who really, really need it, and the old, just like how it's happening in the UK already. We can't be vaccinating the entire populace.
You don't have to. I mean, say who are the more vulnerable? It's only the 65
Hmm.
plus, those who have got comorbidities, and the healthcare workers,
Hmm.
and the police and other
Hmm.
essential workers. If you cover them, I think probably you
Hmm.
can, we have already seen that India has got a large young population who didn't suffer as much. I mean, even
Hmm.
though, the figures state that between 30 to 50 years, roughly about 40 to 50% of the mortality was in that group. But in general, India has been able to sustain because of this large young population. So if the government prioritizes to vaccinate the elderly who have been housebound, fearing all the time going out, at least it gives them some mobility and
Hmm.
relieve the pressure on the healthcare workers. I think you've done a
Hmm.
lot. And having said that, India has got 1.6 billion vaccines at its disposal, and he has done a very tremendous job by developing these vaccine portfolio. So
Hmm.
vaccinating the mass will not be a problem at all from what I look like.
Hmm.
I mean, it's more well prepared compared to any as well prepared as any other Western country. So that scenario is not going to happen. I mean, Indian government
Hmm.
has taken a lot of efforts. I'm sure it will
Hmm.
happen. It's only the removing the apprehensions in the people. Why should I get vaccinated? I think that
Right.
is where it needs to be more education.
Hmm.
We want to eliminate it. The longer it stays in a
Hmm.
circulation, it is going to develop
Hmm.
some mutation, it's going to come in some avatar, it's going to create a problem. So it's going to be a big problem. I mean, we need to end this once and for all at some stage. Otherwise, this is going to be creating a problem. Nobody
Hmm.
anticipated
And
this virus would develop this mutation. Did we? I mean, we
hmm.
didn't.
Also
Otherwise, like
because
we
true, Dr. Praveen, that people are expecting that there could be another mutation of virus, and if it doesn't stop, then there could be a third one as well. Is that possible? That is why we need to make the vaccine soon and take it. Of course, we've dealt with the business aspect of it so that it doesn't become a business. People who need it are given, but maybe there could be a third mutation or something like that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, just a little bit of background about this RNA virus. This is a RNA virus. Now,
Hmm.
RNA is not very clever as compared to the DNA. I mean, our body is purely
Hmm.
DNA, and therefore,
Hmm.
anything that happens in your body, we are able to correct it, and
Hmm.
therefore, we have been sustaining well. Otherwise, it would have died long time ago. This RNA is not
Hmm.
very clever. When it starts producing its virions, the virus particles, it makes a lot of mistakes, and it doesn't correct it. It
Hmm.
lets it go. So when these
Hmm.
mistakes keep on building, they form the mutations.
Hmm.
That's what's happening, and it is going to
Hmm.
happen. It is known. It is a known future. And to answer
Ah.
your question, definitely there will be
Hmm.
mutations. Slowly, these will keep accumulating. And
Hmm.
especially when you have immunocompromised in the population, like cancer patients who are on chemotherapy drugs, in them, the virus stays longer. You and me, when you get infected, by maximum two
Hmm.
weeks, we get rid of it. But in them, it stays longer 30 days, 40 days, 50 days, even 70 days, it's been demonstrated. So during that time, it tries to sort of evolve itself. So there is a survival advantage for it. It doesn't want to end its journey, its saga in this world. It's going to
Hmm.
come with more mutations, and it may not
Hmm.
happen soon, but it will happen over the course of time. So the longer you let it in the population in this world, it is definitely going to happen. So that is why
Hmm.
scientists are saying we have to get on and do the vaccination.
Yeah. Another quick question that comes in, Dr. Praveen, is that how long do you think this whole vaccination process is going to take? Because India is a huge populace. There are other countries that would want to vaccinate a major part of the populace, because in India, at least, we have a lot of young people. But in the UK, let's say, there is a population of more older people. So you have to vaccinate more. How long do you think, by when can we finish vaccinating people? By the end of this year?
I
Or
mean, America.
rather, end of 2021?
Yeah, I mean, USA has already planned that by going by now with this pace of vaccination, they may be able to finish by September. And UK
Hmm.
is thinking somewhere around summertime they should be able to cover population. Now they're doing about 2 lakh a week, but the scientists are saying
Hmm.
we should be at least scaling up to 20 lakh per week. So the space is not adequate at all because we don't have enough supplies. Now for Indian
Hmm.
context, I believe already the process is in place now. As soon as the Oxford vaccine is approved, which I am hoping on, it will be done in next 1 or 2 days, India will start. And by summertime, if we can vaccinate all the healthcare workers, by end of 2022, realistically, we can cover most of the population.
22.
20,
Did
yes.
you
I
say
mean, that's what,
22, sir?
yes, 22, yeah.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm. Hmm.
because of the logistics involved. Uh,
Hmm.
with two vaccines. If it were to be single dose, then we could have done
Hmm.
faster. You have to do one
Okay.
vaccine and then get those patients again, and people then again vaccinate. So the logistics and the population involved, most of them, they agree that 2022 is realistically looking for India to finish the
Mhm.
vaccination.
Hmm. Hmm. So another interesting question, and this is, I would ask this out of curiosity because you're working with the NHS and you're in the UK for so many years. Being an Indian, did you ever advise anyone to, other than taking the medicines that are prescribed, to resort to yoga, to resort to, let's say, home remedies that we Indians usually end up taking? Or do you think there is a little bit of an awareness more in the UK now and in the Western countries now towards the Indian approach of how to, let's say, treat a cough and cold?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember when I myself got infected and there was nothing available. All I did was, home remedies. And then after 3 months, when I myself had a very bad chest
Hmm.
infection and had a
Hmm.
difficulty breathing,
Hmm.
all I did was
Hmm.
yoga, yogic breathing, and those sort of things. It is well
Hmm.
recognized. The Western world has completely recognized this, and people are,
Hmm.
going for home remedies. I never heard using turmeric more in day-to-day cooking than now. I mean, most people, for common cold, all they say is take turmeric, hot water, lime, and those sort of things. So
Hmm.
definitely there is a science which what we ingrained in your in a custom tradition for thousands of years.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I think that needs to be sort of revoked, but that is not
Hmm.
alone sufficient for this kind of a situation now.
Right.
It has to be
Right.
done from day one to build the immunity among the masses. The problem is, you're just introducing something when it is already, evolved. It cannot solve now. It has to be built from day one, all these practices. That's how our ancestors lived for 100 years because every day they
Hmm.
practice. We are not doing it. We are just
Hmm.
using as a stopgap measure when things are gone out of control.
Yeah. That's why they were known as precautions and not really as cure, because if the disease has reached such a serious state, then there has to be a cure for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you the final questions, your final thoughts on it. But before that, I also want to understand from you, because you were talking about India faring well, and we've done actually quite better than many other countries. Do you think that now the Western world is beginning to realize that India is faring well, India has handled this well? Because initially when this happened, there were a lot of numbers and research coming in that, we will not be able to handle this because of, let's say, poverty in India, or not better healthcare services in India. More people will die and we will not be able to treat it. Now there are higher recovery rates. People are talking about vaccines. People are educating amongst themselves. Governments are doing more. Vaccines are getting created. We've treated ourselves, Indians, at home. Do you think the Western world, also UK, is realizing that India has fared well and it's done a good job of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, see, I remember in somewhere in February, March time when the pandemic broke out in this part of the world, I read the articles in New York Times and also in the UK, almost thinking like, how can India manage with such a
Hmm.
paltry health system? It'll all collapse. And then, doomsday suggested that, it'll all go very bad. But on the other
Hmm.
hand, there's a very proactive measures from the government, which was appreciated all over the
Yeah.
world. I mean, the lockdown, I mean, people can talk for or against, but we
Hmm.
should see the
Hmm.
intention behind of saving every life that went through. It is not easy for a country, where large majority of people are daily wage workers, but how it was handled. Of course, there will be some, positive negatives in everything that
Discrepancies
followed.
here and there. Yeah.
No country is perfect, but on the whole, I
Yeah.
think the resolve of the government, what it has taken, especially the vaccines now, I think most of the Western experts have realized, and I've been watching in the
Hmm.
Twitter of all the experts, they have a very positive attitude about how
What
India
about
is
in
doing.
your NHS? What about in your NHS circles, sir? Do they now are very surprised that India has handled this situation very
Oh
well?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah, yeah. I mean, good things are getting appreciated. I mean, what image I'm seeing. I mean, I've been here in the last 16 years. I've been living here, and what I see now is entirely different. People talk of, different approach. Being aggressive. You know, so the whole perception is changing. I mean, it is no longer the old India what the impression people had. It's all changing.
And they're taking the Indian turmerics as well.
In fact, I've even heard people
Hmm.
comparing how sloppy it has been in the Western world when came to taking, aggressive decisions. I even heard those sort of things.
Oh,
So,
really? How sloppy the handle, how they handle it there as compared to India?
yes,
India's handle it well. Ah,
yes,
okay. And they've started taking the haldi's and the turmerics as well, you said.
yeah. I mean, there's always been interest about these antioxidants
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
traditional wisdom. I mean, it's already been incorporated. Yoga is already there, sort of, many places they are actually incorporated in treatment algorithm. In America also, they advocate yoga, and I also encourage yoga and those sort of things to
Do
my
you
patients.
see
So
a time in you say you encourage it amongst your patients? Do you see a time in the UK where the NHS is going to start recommending medically that yoga can treat you, can treat a lot of ailments?
yeah, I mean, I think it is already there. I mean, in certain areas, they're already there. Yoga is already being sort of advocated. They're said like, complementary medicine, they say. So now yoga is already officially recognized, and most of the patients, they themselves go and get, sort of yoga therapy,
Hmm.
pranayama. They all do that.
Hmm.
So, I mean, there is a lot of awareness about the positive effects, especially
All right.
in areas like cancer and palliative care and those sort of things. Yoga has got a big time, so it is already there.
Okay, all right. So the Western world seems to recognize the efforts of India. But any last thoughts from you, sir, on this whole vaccine situation, and when can we finally come out of it? Do you think?
I mean, it's very important, and I appreciate your effort in sort of talking to people like me to spread the awareness. I mean, we have to shun away from other sort of anti-vaccine sentiment going on, because we have to think the larger interest of the country and the society. We can't let it go like this. We can't afford any lockdowns. The only option is vaccines, and we have got tested vaccines within our country, and there is a good data coming through. We can bank upon those vaccines. At least if you cover 50, 60, 70% of the population with these vaccines, we hope to achieve a herd immunity at some stage, so that we don't no longer go with those lockdowns and all those things what we went through. So this is where it's important that people like you keep spreading this awareness. And it's not only the business that is involved, but definitely there is a science behind, and it is for our own good and for the society. That's all I want to say.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. Let's hope we finally have a solution. The Indian vaccine, which is going to treat Indian people, will work, and we'll be soon out of it. Our intention today was to dispel these apprehensions and to dispel these myths about the vaccine. Thank you so much for taking our time, sir, and thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you. Pleasure.